Resident Evil is nothing without its bonus content. From the countless mercenary stages, Hunk's first survivor escape, the story DLCs, setting up Jack Becker's birthday party, sometimes even going into their own spin-offs and multiplayer experiments that nobody cares about, except Outbreak, please bring that back. But one of them stands out above the rest, and it almost never gets its shine because of the circumstances around its release timing, the weak marketing, being relegated to a spin-off series during the serious dark ages of Resident Evil, and also the first spin-off starting off as a 3DS exclusive and the other one selling its story in an episodic content. Revelations 1 and 2 might not be in most people's Resident Evil top 5 lists, but its multiplayer counterparts are so extensive that they almost feel like its own game. I'd like to introduce Raid Mode to you. The greatest, most expansive Resident Evil co-op bonus mode you've probably never played. Big shout out to LambHoot and his video on Revelations 2 that he did, because without it I would have cast these games aside as unimportant spin-offs forever and never discovered all this in the first place. I'll be covering the raid mode in both Revelations 1 and 2, but I'll put significantly more time into 2 because I think that's just way more fleshed out and better executed than the first one. But I got plenty of good stuff to say about Revelations 1 as well, so with that out of the way, let's get into it. So how do you progress in this mode? The game puts you through various stages that reuse areas from the main campaign, either as a solo player or with a friend or random player through co-op. Your objective is to take out all the BOWs in your way and make it to the end of every mission.
Look at me, I'm covered in sweat.
After clearing a mission, you earn XP, unlock new guns and mods that can alter the stats of your guns or add new bonus effects, and some cash currency that they call BP in this game. I still have no idea what it stands for after my playtime. With BP or cash, you can hit the store and buy yourself new guns, mods, restock on your ammo, and buy grenades in between every mission. I would advise to not be too wasteful early on, because they don't really throw you into a pit of money initially. The resource management aspect is still present here, although to a much less extent. The shop always rotates on what it's offering. Backing out and re-entering it to get what you're looking for some reason actually works, and I wonder if this was intentional or an oversight. There's a total of 3 bonuses you can earn during a mission, which is called the Trinity bonus. One of them is completing the stage while killing all enemies, playing on the stage recommended level or lower, and finishing without even getting hit once. And the last one is obviously a pretty insane requirement. You need a very strong loadout and knowledge of enemy spawns, which are often intentionally surprising. After you've completed your first run of missions, you unlock the Trench and Abyss difficulties that rerun the same stages at a higher level requirement and spawn different, stronger enemies this time. Have fun earning the no-hit bonus there, because not only do you get extra money and XP from those, but on the highest difficulties, you can also earn some pretty rare guns and parts that are very powerful. And believe me, I got some pretty insane shit to show you in a few minutes. What's also really nice is that the later port releases on Xbox One, PS4 and Switch actually have an enemy counter and a reminder if you already got hit or not. Thanks for not retroactively patching this into the PC version, Capcom. Its gameplay I would say resembles Resident Evil 5 the most. It definitely plays like that early third-person era, but you can now walk while aiming, which is very beneficial in those tight ship spaces you often walk around in. But it also has this really strange dodge system, which might be the worst in RE history. You cannot pull off an evasion move yourself. It kind of works contextually, meaning that depending on the type of enemy that stands in front of you and the attack they're about to pull off, you already need to move into the required direction the game wants you to in order for your character to dodge in the first place. It's hard to explain, it's even harder to pull off. It almost never works, and sometimes it works without even you trying to do it intentionally. But this guy, TheUrbanArcade, probably found the best exploit to fix this issue 11 years ago, that I wish I would have learned about 30 hours earlier.
What you're going to want to do is hold the button X and rotate your left analog stick clockwise or anti-clockwise as fast as you can. It pretty much dodges every enemy's attack, minus a few of the big guys.
It works more consistently with a controller, but it works. The enemies you encounter are lifted from the campaign as well. You got your regular zombie types, the exploding ones that get real annoying considering you're on a ship. Those sea worms, whatever the hell they are. The Fenriers, which are basically zombie wolves. The hunters are back, that sometimes can go invisible. Resident Evil's own facehuggers, that one fully armored abomination with very few weak points and full armor that always charges at you. And my favorite, this blob with the buzzsaw that can insta-kill you. Sometimes, especially in the harder difficulties, those enemies get stat changes that you can always see next to their level and health bar. They can become smaller and faster, take more damage, or even become bigger and hit even harder. I know that sounds like a lot to deal with, but you'll be gradually introduced to one after another. The very first stage isn't gonna test you with everything it can throw at you immediately. In terms of characters, you can choose between several, from the main story, like Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine, but also a bunch of exclusive characters that were only in Revelations 1. And also Hunk, because you cannot forget about Hunk. And her lady counterpart. They all got their own set of stats that further set them apart, aside from their looks, voice or melee animation. But Jill, for example, got higher machine gun and handgun reload speeds and firing rates. Hunk is also better with machine guns, but also magnum pistols and evades better. Not that I would notice a difference. Or Jessica, who works really fast with snipers. There's also customs to be unlocked for most characters that can buff their attributes, change or even add some extra ones. Rachel Foley, who you unlock after your first Trinity bonus, works really well with shotguns and magnum pistols. She also auto-regenerates health over time, to a certain extent. Her infected version has no weapon buffs, but recovers health even faster, and has a very noticeable melee buff that can even put some in a stun lock. If I talked about every character, we'd be here forever. Moving on to the gun selection, there's every weapon type you can expect from any Resident Evil. Handguns, shotguns, sniper rifles, ARs, SMGs and so on. Some inclusions surprised me, like the G36, AUG or P90 making its first appearance here. There's also a golden AK called the High Roller, which absolutely knocks it out of the park in the damage department, but with the downside of having to deal with insane recoil kickback. Who exactly at the BSAA extracted us out of Saddam Hussein's lair anyway? The handguns in raid mode do pretty decent damage, but there's also a fully automatic surprise in there, being the G18. Now pair a pretty strong damage output with this rate of fire and you will see the results. The shotguns, however, are just really bad and almost unusable out of the gate. Wow, I earned 4 shells back. That was definitely worth wasting 12 of them. Even fully kitted out with some of the best weapon mods, they are still surprisingly weak. There's the stuff you'd find in any god-fearing American home, like the M3 or the Windham, but also the strange multi-barrel Hydra or the...
Drake!
The latter two fire more pellets, which might make them more viable against regular enemies, but again, you have to be real up close for it. And that's the last thing you want to do in a Resident Evil game. The sniper rifles are your absolute friend in the early progression. As expected, they're very powerful, and the weapon handling isn't too sluggish either. You got the bolt-action M40A1, a semi-automatic PSG-1, and the Muramasa, which is a beautiful bolt-action rifle that has only made its appearance in the Revelations games and only in raid mode. You got your magnums and hand cannons too, like the Python, the Lightning Hawk, which I think is Resident Evil's take on the Desert Eagle, and the raid mode exclusive Pale Rider, a revolver with a comically long barrel, which looks like something you'd see from those choke reload animations on YouTube. And you cannot forget the rocket launcher, the grand finale and curtain closer of the most iconic Resident Evil games, and also RE5 in Revelations 2. It's a guaranteed one-hit kill, except for the main bosses of course. But it can be super useful in room clearance, especially in areas with more powerful BOWs and the much later missions. They are a last resort type of option, because you'll never get to use it more than once. Once the launcher is fired, it's disposed. Now luckily you don't have to spend another 60k to buy it every single time, but obviously they don't want you to breeze through the levels with this. Unless you just mod your save game and get yourself an infinite one. Sometimes the guns come with a certain tag to them, which can improve their range, fire rate, recoil, your mobility with them and so on. And there's also the extremely rare ones with their own special name to them. But that's the endgame loot, that got much better stats than their standard name counterparts on the exact same level. There are dedicated players who spent hundreds or even thousands of hours since release grinding and creating a collection of some of the rarest shit you can find. And all I can do is give props to them. These people played nothing but the same endgame levels endlessly to finally get everything there is to get, And as much as I like this mode, I don't got the time for any of that. So in case you're wondering how I got access to these guns, I modded my save game eventually, okay? I know, I'm sorry, I'm a fraud, I get it. I know I'm a cheater, but this video would be done in 2027 if I put all the time into it to get everything. These people are built very differently than me. Now, I've mentioned this before, but you can also alter your stats and customize those guns with your own weapon mods. You got your basic stuff like damage or critical bonus increases, larger magazines, faster reloading, but also the more unique attributes like occasionally stunning an enemy while firing, increasing ammo and money drop rates, charging your next shot, a very interesting mod called Gluttony that recycles ammo from your other gun so you can use it for the current gun you're firing. You can fire without reloading. You can burst fire almost any weapon type, and even better, full burst. A mod that turns literally any weapon you use it on fully automatic. I'm not sure which madman at Capcom came up with this thing, but this really is a game changer. More games could add something like this. You can also attach an invisible grenade launcher to almost any gun. What it does is basically use your standard grenades while your gun is still up, which keeps you mobile and lets you seriously spam them if you feel like it. And look, I'm only scratching the surface here. With the right combinations you can absolutely transform how a gun works and make for some absolute meta builds. But these insane upgrades are almost all endgame loot, meaning the Abyss difficulty, which is the hardest out of the three, granting you these incredible guns and upgrades, but also the finale level called Ghost Ship, which is a sort of gauntlet mission where you fight your way through the entire ship with enemies that grow stronger and stronger over time, even growing towards levels way above your own maximum level of 50. It then ends in an extremely long standoff with a boss fight at the end. It's a stress test of all your knowledge, skills and current gear. Good luck, cause these enemies will catch you off guard very early. The PS4, Xbox One and Switch versions also include the exclusive Ghost Ship Chaos version. The enemy spawns are remixed and the levels even go up to 80. Thanks for not retroactively patching us into the... you know the deal. The biggest setback Revelation 1's raid mode has is how much of a grindfest it really is. I think around the level 20s is when you realize that you need to go back and replay all the levels over and over and see if you can earn all the bonuses that you haven't got already. See if you can convince a friend to play this with you, because then it might be easier. Because on solo it becomes a slog to go through at some point. I think in general this raid mode is still really fun, and it's kinda crazy to think that all of this was initially offered on a handheld 3DS. But it can be a very repetitive time sink, but it has its fans that prefer it even over the second one. But believe me, Revelation 2's iteration is way more fleshed out and you haven't seen nothing yet. Let me show you. Revelation 2's raid mode is a whole different beast from the first one. There's a lot more stages to pick from, no different weapons to play with, a lot of new characters that come with their own distinct set of skills. Like in the last game, a lot of campaign segments are taken and reworked into their own condensed little levels, which the game groups together as so-called gauntlets. Your goal is also to eliminate most or all BOWs, or in a few cases defend some abstract structure like in a tower defense type mission. There's a total of 49 unique locations taken from the Revelation's main campaign and Resident Evil 6. And when you also count the throwback DLC, which includes 4 more levels from both Revelations 1 and Resi 6, it adds up to 53. And honestly, after finishing the story mode myself, there's a decent more unique and interesting locations they could have pulled from, honestly. Some of the endgame areas look really nice artistically, and that one mansion could have been a cool level on its own. Now most of those stages, just like Revelations 1, also come with a higher difficulty variant that has more different enemy types and a higher rank requirement. So you could technically add this up to over 100 levels. But obviously, visually those are the same stages and I don't think those would really count. Revelations 2 plays very differently from the first one. While Revelations 1 still retained a lot of its gameplay DNA from RE4 and 5, The second one feels a lot like its own thing while still incorporating some aspects from other RE games. A huge improvement is how dodging works. In the last one it felt like you had to position yourself exactly in the way the game wants you to be in order for your character to automatically juke aside from a swing. In Rev 2, evading is a simple button press in any direction, so it's entirely on you to figure out the attack patterns while giving you complete agency in the moment. It will take you a while to learn and figure it out, but once you do, you'll have it down consistently. Another addition is stealth and crouching. It's not nearly as relevant as it is in the main campaign, but in case you thought Resident Evil 4's remake was the one that introduced stealth takedowns, Revelations 2 actually predates it. But it works the way you expect it to be. Whenever you find an enemy just casually roaming or standing there from a distance, you can sneak up on them for an easy takedown. Now, enemy variety might be the biggest in RE history. I think there's just over 10 if we're not counting one of bosses. I want to leave a few surprises, but you got your regular zombies, you got the Iron Head that you cannot shoot at his head because it got metal protection, there are these bloated zombies that blow up after death, but also drop these weird T-Virus trip mines that you can use against other enemies and are surprisingly powerful. I've seen the Regenerator return, but he's honestly not a threat. You got the Slinger that constantly throws gunk at you and is annoying as hell. Infected Dogs return, but their design isn't as cool anymore. The Revenant, where you need to shoot at enough body parts to find its weak spot. Those can be very satisfying to fight against. And lastly, this nasty thing right here. Something that gave me a level of tension I rarely witness in a Resident Evil game. This one is called the Glasp, and what it basically does is sort of bend light in order to make itself invisible. You can only hear it come towards you. Your vision keeps getting distorted, but in raid mode you just have to figure out where it is exactly, and if you don't, it's instant death. There are counters to it, however. A smokescreen can actually expose its position, and randomly hitting them with any throwable bottle just works in general. Of course, like in Revelations 1, depending on the mission and difficulty, some of those enemies come with extra status effects. They could become smaller and quicker again, can put you on fire and explode on death, freeze you, leave around a gas trail, set up a shield barrier at the front, heal their own friends, set up a death counter on you, or sometimes just turn invisible. There might be a few more than that, and multiple abilities can stack onto one enemy. Again, those are the really bad examples that I save for later for the mid to end game content. Believe me, this raid mode is still way easier than the first one. First off, you're never in financial trouble with the amount of gold you earn, and there's little incentive for you to spend on guns and upgrades early on. You really need to go out of your way to become broke, which I think they should have balanced a little better. In this game, the amount of enemies remaining is constantly displayed on the screen this time, in every version of the game, which is important for the bonuses, which are now called medallions here, that are also a lot easier to obtain. Yet again, there's a medallion for just completing the mission below on the exact recommended level. Another one is yet again for defeating every enemy, but also one for not using any herbs during the level, which is not a headache unlike the not getting hit at all challenge was. There's also the small little trick, which the developers for some reason didn't think about. So a new addition are the so-called life crystals in this game. Instead of backing out and completely retrying after you die, you have the choice to self-revive and pick up right where you left off with full HP and ammo. You get a whopping 10 of these in the beginning, and you are not going to use these for a while. If you do end up dying anyway, you can use them and still earn all of the medallions, because while you did refill your HP, a herb was never used. And I think that makes it too easy. The blue crystals can be earned with daily challenge missions, and the red ones are the ones that have to be bought with real money. I cannot imagine them making that much money with those with how stacked you are in the beginning. The level progression has completely changed. Instead of 50 levels, there's now 100 for each character. That sounds like a lot, and well, yeah, you would definitely put in the double-digit numbers getting your first character to level 100, which is before you use the best possible loadouts and missions for XP, that is. But there's just a much stronger sense of progress in this raid mode. I don't think you will ever be stuck repeating a mission because you're under-leveled and not getting any stronger. The daily missions you'll eventually unlock always give you a lot of XP. There's also the so-called rest bonus, which is kind of like an XP boost for your first mission if you haven't played a character in a while. And there's also weapon masks that increase the XP per kill as well, so there's a lot of different ways the game makes you feel like you're always getting something out of the time you're putting in. The characters mostly come from the game's story mode, like Claire, Barry, Moira, and numerous other Resident Evil fan favorites like Gabe, Pedro, or Neil. Can't forget about my goats, but also some who the hell cares guest characters like RE6 Leon, Albert Wesker, Chris and Jill from Revelations 1, and of course, half man, half whatever the hell he is, Hunk again. And also his female counterpart, Lady Hunk. But this time she's actually just a skin for the other character, Gina Foley. They've also done the same with Rachel Foley from Revelations 1 here. I don't know, I guess they wanted to compile all the irrelevant female characters into one character or something. They all come with their own set of active and passive skills, some of which are shared with one another, and there's a ton of them to equip. This goes way deeper than just some stat changes. For example, you got Drill Charge. You basically charge through an entire horde, which makes you invincible during the act. It's not really in the top set of skills, and honestly I wish the drill was its own melee weapon. Ground Pound does significant area damage and stuns your enemies, allowing you to follow up with a strong melee punch. It works really well to help you out of a sticky situation, but so also does Shockwave, which is a lot more defensive than offensive. It barely does any damage, but pushes them away further, and unlike Ground Pound, works on the recharger with no limited ammunition to it. Ammunition is a weird word to use here. The rocket launcher is now an ability that doesn't take up a weapon slot and is insanely powerful. If you upgrade it enough times, it's an absolute game changer even for the hardest boss fights, taking over half of one boss's HP away with just one rocket. There's a very limited amount of ammunition you can carry with you, but it's more than one. But honestly, there's not much you will need anyway. You can also make yourself invisible, that lets you escape any situation at the push of a button and allow you to perform stealth kills again, which is kinda crazy. But alternatively, you got invincibility, but at the cost of running speed. There's different types of throwable bottles with elemental damage to them. Fire, ice, normal explosive bottles, decoys and smoke screens. There's a skill you can equip that lets you throw them faster, stick them like Semtexes, or use them as landmines. The gun mastery skills turn the extra reserve ammo capacity and faster reload times into one skill than just separate weapon mods. There's multiple upgrades that improve the evasion action, like increasing its distance, the recovery time, meaning how much you can spam the move, but also the highly useful evade cancel. Want a reload skip? Cancel it. Did you just get knocked down by an enemy? Cancel yourself back into standing position. There's upgrades for healing, like carrying more herbs, healing faster, healing under whatever circumstances you're in without an animation, even when you're being grabbed, but also the basic stuff like starting with more HP or extra shield protection. You can upgrade your melee attacks in different ways as well, and there's even a whole fucking katana once you finish its final mission, and I am so not joking. And we'd be here forever if I listed all of them, because there's so many more. Do you play solo and want to make use of the gesture system in some way by just cringing zombies to death? That's an option. The gun variety is what you expect out of any shooter. You got a Makarov pistol, the classic Samurai Edge, or burst pistols. For assault rifles you get to choose between their average reliable American carbine to the less reliable but stronger Russian AK, with the golden AK High Roller also making a return again. For the shotgun section, the Drake for Revelations 1 returns, but we also got other classics like a Spaz 12 knockoff and a double barrel that you can triple, quadruple or sextuple barrel with the right weapon mod. A noticeable difference here is that the shotguns are actually useful and viable. Still far from the best option, but they're not absolute pea shooters anymore. Making sure your weapon level keeps up is important. At a damage drop-off range just seems really short even for video game shotguns. Put some upgrades on it and you will still be able to build one hell of a beast. The SMGs include a UMP and Uzi knockoff, which are fine, but my favorite and the Resident Evil 4 standout is the Chicago Typewriter. The mobster's go-to, one of the coolest guns of all time, makes a return, and as you expect, this thing can shred through the hordes. The fire rate mixed with the large drum magazine and that trademark typewriter sound just makes for a beautiful combination. The hand cannons and magnums are back and as powerful as you expected, from the old to modern stuff, and the return of the ridiculous Pale Rider. Still has the super long downtime after every bullet fired. For snipers you got a hunting rifle, the SVD which will hard carry you through your early game grind, and the beautiful Muramasa sniper rifle that returns, which is the best of the category. But there's also one special rifle which works different from all of them, which is the anti-materia rifle. This humongous thing, used to take out armored vehicles or sometimes even tanks, will of course be used to take on the biggest PPWOWs. A substantially higher damage output at the cost of low ammunition that's not restockable during the mission. So while it is powerful, I'd say you'd still be better off just using a normal sniper with much more ammo capacity that you can at least find out of a wooden crate. I also wish it would sound way more powerful. The weapon mods you attach also work slightly different from Revelations 1. So in this one you cannot easily equip or unequip a part like you could before. Once you choose one, it will stick with your gun. The only way to get rid of it and to open up the slot is by destroying the part entirely or by destroying the gun itself to safely retrieve all the parts you equipped on it. Regardless of your choice, a sacrifice will always have to be made. Getting rid of the gun for your parts is the smarter option, because you will always find a new AK, sniper or whatever it is that's just as strong or even better than what you previously used. But for a rare part you will always have to be way more lucky to find it again. And there are some seriously good ones whose quantity in your inventory you could count on only one hand. A new addition is the toolbox. This allows you to upgrade the level and thus the effectiveness of your parts by combining two identical ones together into one. I wish they came up with a smarter way to do this. Oftentimes you'll have the same weapon upgrade twice but at different levels, so you cannot do anything with them and they just take up extra space. This is something the Switch re-release remedied with the part booster upgrade, which isn't available in any other version of the game. Thanks for not retroactively, a lot of the old parts return and also some new ones. You can now put elemental damage on your guns, which is incredibly powerful. Fire ammo lasts a lingering damage effect cause they're on fire. Ice ammunition has the chance to slow enemies down. Electric ammunition makes enemies way more vulnerable. The absolutely goated full burst of course makes a return. And there's also another ridiculous one called homing ammunition. Bullets that can search the target for you like the smart weapons from Cyberpunk, just on crack. The tracking degree depends on the level of your part. And listen, if you thought the smart pistol in Titanfall was kinda nasty, experiment a little in Revelations 2 and you might come up with something stupid that basically does the job for you. Now that is some endgame shit. Now the greatest thing with all these elements is the sheer versatility of builds you can make for your character. I made a ridiculously powerful katana build with inherited skills like evade cancel, increased evade distance, any melee improvements that you can think of, stealth stuff like invisibility and smoke bombs, and lastly an old revolver with little ammunition in it. I felt like a samurai in a third-person horror shooter, the closest thing I would get to an Onimusha 5. If you're a Clint Eastwood kind of guy, then you can go with an outlaw gunslinger build instead. Take a revolver, a double barrel shotgun and hunting rifle, with each of its mastery skills fully upgraded, and some explosives. But most importantly, for your revolver, a specific weapon part that charges up the next bullet you fire, mixed with homing ammunition and full burst all at the same time. Why that combination in particular? So you can basically recreate Dead-Eyed Resident Evil. Do you see how fucking cool this shit is? I'm only scratching the surface here, the possibilities are almost endless. So while grinding levels, collecting parts, upgrading skills and making builds are the key aspects to its progression system, there's also the endgame aspect to it called Code Red. Code Red is unlocked after beating the Omega missions, which is technically the ending to raid mode, which I'll get into a little later. The game runs back all the previous stages at a much higher difficulty setting, this time at a recommended level of 90. Enemies are stronger than ever, they have a lot more status buffs, and you get more and more better loot, some of the best you can get. If you're lucky, you might come across a maximum level 100 gun that comes with the exclusive option to upgrade it beyond its limits. For a pretty hefty gold price you can upgrade your firepower, firing rate or capacity further and further. However, I'd say the secret feature, which is locked away until like 30 hours in, is absolutely useless, and your current weapon level and your weapon parts that you put on top of it make it more than manageable to get through a Code Red mission. The status effects of the BOWs might be annoying to deal with, but playing it a bit cautious with them isn't too hard. And also at that point you will have more than enough medallions, so just complete those missions at the current level you're in instead of dropping down, unless you're bored. It's also a wasted opportunity to put some campaign-only weapons into raid mode. For example, there's the bow gun that you unlock by beating the story on normal, the meat grinder drill, which rather than being its ability could have now been its own weapon, or even the little bubble gun that the girl uses in the story. I do think the Code Red endgame is pretty lackluster. Aside from the horrible drop rates that are so terrible that the community was even creating mods for it to fix it, you can also just grind out some records, aka completionist challenges. You get most of them by just normally playing, but there was also an important one, which was the Evaluate 300 Albums challenge, basically opening 300 treasure rewards you found. That was the challenge that gave me my only copy of Full Burst. If I wanted another, I would have to grind through Code Red again, and getting something exceptional in there could feel like forever. Now, unlike Revelations 1, there's actually a bit of story behind this raid mode. A lot of it is speculation, since all we really have to go off of is some voice lines, shared themes with the story mode, and online theories. But here's my perspective. This experience seems to be a virtual simulation that's run by some mysterious woman that taunts and commands you via an old telephone speaker. A battle simulation that she calls Red Queen Alpha.
Rise and shine, my adorable little guinea pig. This is my baby, the Red Queen Alpha. I've invested a lot of time into making this the perfect battle simulator. And now it's time for you to show me what it can do. Run, my little hairball. Spin those wheels.
Her goal with this experiment isn't exactly clear, but she seems to be collecting battle data from you with every mission you finish. Maybe to create some sort of super soldier or monster familiar with your combat skills.
Keep it up, lab rat. Show me you're worth my time. Very interesting indeed. I have created an absolute thing of beauty here. Maybe I should submit it to the Louvre. Oh, and I suppose you're doing fine as well.
The woman reiterates that none of this is real. It's all in the head, and the only thing the simulation could possibly do to you is mentally torment you.
Did that hurt? It's not even real. This little game is all in your head.
The room that you always end up in after clearing a stage or loading into raid mode is called the vestibule, which is fitting as it is a small room or sort of passageway into the next area through a portal that puts you into the selected mission. You're pretty much a lab rat for her data. However, she realizes that she underestimated your capabilities once you progress far enough.
These results are clearly beyond basic human ability. But then again, I always thought there was something not quite right with you. It's the smell.
Not sure what she's referring to by the smell, other than her maybe implying that in case the player is no-lifing the shit that they should hop inside a shower someday. But at some point the AI or battle simulator cannot keep up anymore and stops processing your data since you're, well, apparently just too good.
Your data is exceeding the system's measuring limits. This is impossible!
In the finale Omega mission, you fight what I assume is the Red Queen Alpha intelligence whose data has been transferred into this abomination. And once you beat it, you're met with this end screen.
Well, you broke it. Are you happy with yourself? You should be. You're the first and only guinea pig to do so. The simulation is over. Go celebrate with a milkshake or something.
I'm gonna be honest, spending almost 30 hours to get to this ending so you can tell me that I should touch grass had me a little heated at that point of time. But she's not wrong looking back on it. But look at all that XP though. But what exactly is Cipher Steal? Cipher, as the game calls it, is this empty husk of data you spawn in every time you load into raid mode before you choose a character. Obviously showing that the people you play as aren't actually real, but rather 3D recreations of them instead. But it leaves the question of who exactly the woman is talking to through the simulation speakers, which might, well, just be the player themselves. How this person got hooked into the simulation is never explained. It's possible that they were hooked to some kind of machine similar to how Natalia was in the story.
Do you not like this little world I've created? Well, don't worry about your physical body, it's safe. Your mind, however, may take quite a beating.
And since the video footage already showed it, the female voice speaking is the exact same as Alex Wesker.
It's already done. I've conquered fear and earned the right to become a god.
Come out from behind that glass so I can choke a god.
Now I don't think this is connected to the main story or Resident Evil lore as a whole at all, and is rather just a super basic outline and context for a bonus mode, of which I'm going deeper in than necessary. But hey, it's always fun to speculate. I feel like calling things overrated, underrated and so on has become way too overused, but Revelations 1 and 2 might actually really fit into that category. Not too many have played them, but if you ask anyone who did, they would definitely sing its praises. Can you imagine if Capcom, or whoever they outsourced their failed multiplayer experiences to, took their asset repurposing skills for a modern raid mode iteration that features stages from not only the next game, but also from Village, 7, the remakes, and retrofitted them so they can work with their new gameplay properly? We also got so many player models and guns, I'm just saying there's just a lot of material to start with. But I have to be a little cynical here. At times it didn't even feel weird that something like this even existed. It is way too packed of an extra mode for a spin-off series that it actually feels like the main portion of the game itself. You know that special feeling when you play certain older games, or something else like Elden Ring or Baldur's Gate 3, and you just think, I cannot believe I'm getting all of this for just $60. I feel like something like raid mode today would have to come with a live service incentive. I mean, the first two games already sold you a few characters, stages, and even some pay to win stuff, but for a third time they would probably go even harder. A return of raid mode would be pretty scary because I would like Capcom to take it into consideration, but greedy maneuvers aren't past them. Their games have mostly been hits, but they will still put at one shady or greedy move that would just make you roll your eyes. I'm just saying, if you're looking for another multiplayer or co-op experiment to work on, take this into consideration. You got a new mainstream audience to introduce it to.